be putting up their own posters for their candidates, but as part of that they put up your own posters. Is that how it works?
Not for us, no. We have Fine Gael nationally have engaged one single contractor who's doing it for the European elections.
Ah, okay.
So
that's how it works.
That's how it works. Yeah.
And is that the same with Fianna Fáil?
It's pretty much the same, because the scale, some of it is being done by some of our volunteers, but just because the scale of this constituency, I mean, it covers 12 counties.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes when we get the phone calls in about the posters, we may not personally know, where the poster has gone up, so it's somebody has to check it to us. But I think we all are very appreciative of all the volunteers, who often do it on a thankless basis, who go out and knock on the doors and put up the posters. And sometimes it's not in the nicest of weather, but it's because they believe in our political system. And, we forget about those heroes, because without them democracy wouldn't function.
Just on that, we had a lot of debris after the storms on Friday night, and with some volunteers locally, or people contact us by email or tweet. And yesterday, as we were driving, we were up in North Cork, we had clippers and we fixed a few of them. So it's a bit of everything at this stage, volunteerism, but there is somebody dedicated to doing them.
Well, Damien, I'm glad to say now, over the last 5 years, I've been an active person putting up the few posters, but we equally, Malcolm, have a great team of supporters and volunteers. And look, the payback, I suppose, for them is if any of us are elected, then they really will be supporting them big time in our campaign.
Yeah, and what we'll do is we're going to talk about a number of policies first. So people that don't know, we've got Malcolm Byrne. You come down to us from Gorey today. Thank you so much for joining us. You're a Fianna Fáil candidate in the Ireland South MEP election. Deirdre Clune, sitting MEP at present for Fine Gael. Thank you so much for coming up this morning from Cork. And Grace O'Sullivan came all the way in from Tremora this morning, Green Party candidate. We're putting this out on Facebook as well, so if anybody wants to, they'll be able to see it later on Facebook. And anybody wants to text in any questions, please do to 083 333 975. Deirdre Clune, how's the campaign going for you so far? How are you getting a response? What sort of response are you getting?
I'm getting a positive response. I think I'm there now 5 years as an MEP, so probably better known than I was 5 years ago. But I'm also getting a kind of a response where I say to people, I'm standing for the European Parliament. I think Europe matters now. It matters more than ever for us, and people agree. There is a greater awareness of European Union, European Parliament and what it does. And I think post-Brexit, we're not in a post-Brexit scenario, but post the vote in the UK, people are definitely more engaged and more conscious of Europe and what it means to us. And they are taking the leaflets and they are asking questions. So it's a much more, from my point of view, much more engaging campaign than 5 years ago, much more positive towards Europe. And it's an opportunity to discuss the issues that I want to see in the next Parliament, or the work that we have done in the last 5 years. So it's, from that point of view, I would say it's definitely more open and a more positive campaign than 5 years ago.
Great, I'll come to you in a second. Malcolm, the response so far on the doors, like you're a first-time candidate in terms of the MEP. So you're getting your face out there, you're doing a lot of social media stuff. What's the response been so far?
I think there's a challenge, because people are, and I know you make the point about the posters, Damien, but in many ways people don't really become aware that there's an election on and there isn't full engagement until they see the posters going up. And frequently it's their first thought is about the local elections. And I'm not surprised, when I'm here in Waterford, when people raise local issues. And the good thing is, I suppose, that I'm often with the excellent team of Fianna Fáil candidates in the Waterford local area, so I can ask them to deal with some of the local issues. I think bizarrely, and as Deirdre said, the Brexit issue, the B issue, has made people more focused on Europe and on some of the issues. And also there's an awareness around some of the issues in which Europe needs to engage. So on the big issue of climate change and climate justice, on issues around trade and obviously connectivity here in the southeast, which is very important. For me, investment in research and innovation and the whole area of student mobility is something that's seen as very important. And Europe's place in the world. I think, interestingly, the results of the Spanish elections last night, where we've seen, another far-right party emerge in Europe, that's coming up as a concern about where is Europe going to be going over the next 5 years. There's still a challenge. There's still 3 weeks to go. And unlike the local elections, where we don't have the chance to kind of knock on every door, we've just got to hope through programs like yours and through social media and through engaging with people on the streets that they'll come and talk to us.
Seamus, just say, did you just call volunteers and campaigners heroes? We'll come back to you that in a second.
Absolutely.
Grace,
Yeah.
what's your response so far?
So, Damien, I've been literally out at the doors, or let's say I've been carrying out local meetings in each of the 12 counties since Christmas. So the reaction I'm getting now, particularly, especially up at the Dungarvan Food Festival yesterday, was I'm Waterford's only EU candidate. So I'm getting a big reaction to that now, because people are recognising that they could have a voice in Europe. And I know we're talking about Ireland South and that, but we do have the big parties who have their candidates based in different counties. So that's why I'm getting quite a reaction. The reaction also I'm getting is sadness. So I had a woman come up to me on the promenade in Tremor last week, and she shed a little tear because she's an older woman, and she said, "You've been talking about these issues, climate action, climate justice, environment, for the last more than 30 years. In your work with Greenpeace and other environmental organisations." And she was sad because she's hearing the climate strikers, she's hearing the children, and she's worried. So I think that's giving me an advantage on the door now, because I have the track record.
Okay, Deirdre, have you been doing enough at Parliament regarding issues that Grace is talking about?
I think that this is one you hear a lot now about climate justice and climate addressing climate change, but in fact a lot has been done in the Parliament in the last term. We had the Paris Agreement, where every nation, well, not every nation, but we've seen the US pulled out since, agreed to targets, and they're binding now for the member states, individual member states, including Ireland, and they have come from the European Parliament. I've been a member of the Transport Committee for the last 5 years on the Parliament, and we've introduced a legislative programme that addressing cars emissions, reducing emissions of CO2 by 2030 standards, 2040 standards, and that's going to have a real effect, because it means that transport is one of our biggest challenges, and that cars coming in here, we're takers of that technology. So we can, at the European Parliament level, influence the standards of emissions from cars. And again, that's going to kickstart the development of electric vehicles. So there is an awful lot being done in the Parliament, and more to do, yes, but a lot being done that I don't think is out there enough. And I'm thinking it's fantastic in this election to get the opportunity to explain what has been done and what is going to happen again in the next 5 years.
Malcolm, Grace is critical of the big parties like yourselves and the lack of progress that you've made on issues such as this?
Well, I don't accept that, and I suppose I'd agree with Grace.
You don't have to be all friendly here this morning.
No.
I know you're all smiling here now.
Well, I think there is a lot of agreement. I think our challenge is about how we address some of these issues. And so what is the European Parliament going to do over the next 5 years? Deirdre's right in the area of transport. We're also going to need to look at in the area of agriculture, which is vitally important to this country. And I think most of those who are involved in farming in Ireland accept that there's a need to address it. I think what's going to be important is for the European Parliament, in the context of the next round of CAP, that we provide the necessary transition supports that will allow primary producers to transition to producing even more green food. And I think one of the things about it, and farmers often get blamed a lot, but I think in fairness, we've a very good reputation in Ireland in terms of our green food. And I think at a European level, where we have been able to talk about top quality standards with regard to safety and with regard to data protection, I think we can do the same in terms of food production. And we're starting at a very good point in Ireland. The supports, though, have to be there for our primary producers and our farmers. One of the first big debates that whoever's elected to the new European Parliament is going to be on CAP. I think there's one other crucial point, and it's tied.
Has agreed to the CAP position.
Well, it has, but there's still talk in the budget, and I mean, I suppose this is the problem that we're going to have with the budget. Is the first big issue is going to be the EU budget, and if and when the UK pulls out, there's going to be potentially a hole in the budget, and the biggest set of payments coming to Ireland, about 80% of payments come under CAP. And we have got to ensure, first of all, that Ireland is able to maintain that proportion of payments, but equally that CAP is used to support the transition of farmers.
Okay.
Damien, can I come in here? Because look, I don't
Grace.
normally reflect back, but I will, and you've given me the go ahead to be a little bit annoyed, if that's okay. So I look back 5 years and I look at the track record of Fine Gael in terms of climate action and in terms of the environment, and the evidence is out there, Deirdre. The Climate Action Network report, the European report, which was EU Commission funded, only 2 weeks ago, it said not only did you vote badly in terms of climate action, and not only did you weaken any potential possibility of Ireland coming out good in terms of the environment, that it is shameful. And that report, Damien, is online for people. Like, yeah, your record, and I'm really sorry, but I have to hold it to you here, is absolutely disgraceful and abysmal in the European Parliament. It's not good enough. We're starting from such a low base. I'm sorry now, I have to say, Damien, we have not been represented well in the European Parliament, and that's why I really want to get there and go there.
We have
Deirdre.
voted for
You haven't
standards
Okay,
in
Grace,
terms
let
of
Deirdre talk.
reducing in the area of transport, in agriculture as well, and the record stands for itself. I mean, the Parliament has
It's
passed
atrocious.
a number of pieces of legislation, and we have ensuring the Paris Agreement is enacted. And I know the report you're talking about, a report that looked at 3 minor amendments and didn't give an overall view, and I will send it on to you, a detailed response to that report.
Yeah.
So you're
Do
incorrect
you
to
accept
say that.
any of Grace's criticisms, Deirdre, or is she completely off the mark?
No, I don't. I think the work we have done in the last 5 years in terms of addressing climate change, starting with the Paris Agreement, which was a monumental agreement on worldwide, and now from Europe's point of view, we have to implement standards, and the standards come back to the countries. We have 2020 targets to meet, which we're not going to do, but we will get there by 2030, and again 2040 to be carbon neutral by 2050. They are the targets, and they have been set at European level, and it's up to every member state to implement those targets.
Grace, before you come back, I just want to ask Malcolm that, because his party has been in Europe as well.
Well,
You're not in Europe yourself, but like the criticisms
I
would
think
be...
Grace will. Well, no, because I think Grace will know the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats in Europe, which is the Fianna Fáil grouping within the European Parliament. I think
Not for all of the Fianna Fáil MPs.
well,
Brian
in terms
Crowley.
of the position that I would take in the Fianna Fáil group, and I think Grace will acknowledge that the ALDE group has been quite strong in terms of on environmental issues. I think what's also crucial is in the next European Parliament, there will be a difference, because for so long, the European Parliament has been controlled by the European People's Party, of which Fine Gael is a member, and the Socialists and Democrats, of which the Labour Party are a member. They've controlled and dominated the European Parliament.
Of how the people vote.
I accept.
Malcolm.
I'm not disputing. I'm not disputing that. They do.
It's not controlling.
Oh, they do.
reflecting
But the
people's views.
difference is the balance of power in the next Parliament will be held by the ALDE group, which Fianna Fáil is part of, and the Green Group. We need to stand up.
Nobody can
The
discuss that.
centrist, on unlikely trends, that is the case. And I think it's important that we have a centrist position in Europe to be able to advance some of those common issues. And I think that one of the things we do need to do in the Spanish elections I referred to just up is we do need to stand up to the extremes of the far left and to the far right. And I'm sorry, Deirdre, but the European People's Party, of which Fine Gael is a part, has not been doing that. You've allied yourself with Viktor Orban in Hungary. You have allowed yourself to drift over to the far right. And if we are to have responsible centrist policies at a European level, which are absolutely essential for Ireland, then we cannot allow the rise of the far left or far right, and parties here shouldn't be flirting with them.
I've got to give Deirdre a chance to respond. Firstly, Grace.
Damien, the Green Alliance in Europe is really strong, and on all of the issues that Malcolm has spoken about. But what I like even more, and why I'd like to go there, is that left of centre. So that good kind of strong socialism view as well, where we look at people. So one of my pillars in this campaign is communities, and building communities from bottom up, and looking after people who've been disadvantaged. And that's where the Greens are very strong in Europe, not only climate and not only environment, but also that social agenda.
Deirdre, very briefly before we take a break.
On the parties,
On Malcolm's point.
Viktor Orban being member of the EPP. Yes, he's a member of the EPP group, and that grouping has been suspended from the group at present, pending investigation. Expulsion is still on the table, but I think you learn when you're elected to the European Parliament, you learn the word compromise, and you learn the word talking to people, and you learn that it's not black and white. And if you push people out of your group, you push them to the far right. And at one point, the Conservatives in the UK left the EPP group in the centre. They joined the ECR to the right, and now we have Brexit. So is that what we want? Push people out, or do we engage with them and hope that they will we can resolve the issues? If not, we will expel.
Before you answer those questions, we're going to take a very, very quick break. We're coming back with a lot of your texts and comments. People want to ask us about the imbalance of the spread of wealth in the South East. where it is perceived in Europe as a very wealthy constituency overall. We're joined by Malcolm Byrne, Fianna Fáil candidate in Ireland South, along with Billy Kelleher, and Billy's not allowed in Waterford. Malcolm, is that right?
Oh, well,
He's on the buses.
maybe,
Huh?
but
How did you let that happen?
the Fianna Fáil delegates at the convention chose me as the candidate to select it.
Yeah, but
I'm proud.
They've given you Waterford as your
No.
constituency to
It
cover.
wasn't. I wasn't given Waterford. I wanted Waterford because we don't have an MEP from any party from the south.
But they did divide up the.
It is divided, but
So you're supposed to be Waterford. So why is Billy's face on the buses?
Well, you can ask Billy Keller
will.
with that.
But I'm sure you've asked him, have you?
There's a Fianna Fáil aim to gain 2 seats in this constituency. I'm the representative from the southeast. I asked to campaign in Waterford. I think one of the things we do need to talk about is how the southeast has been neglected.
And we'll do that in a second. How are you getting on with Billy? Are you okay?
Well, I think like any party, there are always going to be divides. I'm probably getting on as well as Deirdre's getting on with her two running mates, who I can say that I am getting on very well with. Though Damien is the excellent local election candidates that we have here. in Waterford.
Okay. Deirdre Clune, speaking of people getting on, we just had the resignation of the Director of Elections here in Waterford over the weekend, Maurice Cummins. Maurice would be a good friend of yours, and a lot of people would know him. Is the party in a little bit of turmoil down here, do you know?
No, I don't think so. I heard that Maurice had resigned. In fact, I heard your piece earlier on. I don't know the details, but that's it. He has resigned. But as far he was Director of Elections and chairman of the constituency as well. But we have our local elections candidates. They're up and running. They have their literature. They know what they're doing.
Have you been out campaigning with John Deasy? Has John Deasy been out on the campaign trail, and is he expected to?
I'm going to contact John and let him know that we're in the area. It's hard because the Dáil is sitting as well when you're out and about.
Now, Deirdre, come on, we're like,
you
don't know if. What about Paddy Coffey? Has Paddy Coffey been out with you?
As the other candidates have said, it's with the local election candidates that you engage when you're doing a campaign. So that's what I've been doing. I was out with them, and will be again today, meeting with locally in Dungarvan and wherever our candidates are. But that's the way, because there is a strong synergy between locals and Europeans.
I'll come back to you in a second. Grace, some people have said that you did say in the past that you weren't going to put up more than 10 posters in a constituency, but you've got a lot more up. Did you say anything like that in the past?
No, I didn't say that specifically. I have, what I did, Damien, is I have a number per county. And in the areas, obviously, where there's larger demographic or where there's a stronger Green voter, in fact, Wicklow, Cork is quite strong. Waterford is strong with the Greens.
So you never said that you were going to put up a minimum amount or a maximum amount? No, okay.
No, I haven't done that. Now, what I don't have, and no one will see, is a huge fleet of diesel buses driving around the county or the constituency.
Are you accusing the other candidates then of spending a lot more money than you're spending?
Look, you have much more to spend. It is like I'm hearing from people later more. Look, if you don't
back to you
mind,
in a second,
Malcolm,
folks.
that there is a sense of disgust at the amount of posters generally, but moreover the buses that are a huge fleet of buses. So look, I'm driving my hybrid. If that's, I don't have the sign on the side yet because my team is small. They're very effective and they're very, very dedicated. But I don't have that kind of
Malcolm.
resource.
I mean, this is not because we're all substantially funding our own campaign. I have one small bus on the road, but to be honest, Grace, it's much easier to transport a load of canvassers in one bus than to have several cars on the road.
So you're being more environmentally friendly.
It's much more environmentally friendly.
We actually what we do, Malcolm, is we have teams in each place. So I've been, anyone who knows me will have seen me.
Well,
thanks to the EU standards that I spoke about, those diesel buses will be
and the other thing, can I just say
Grace,
one of my platforms is transport, and in Ireland our greenhouse gas emissions from private transport system is absolutely rocketing. And the thing is where we need to put our money and where we can draw down that money from Europe, and Ireland is poor at drawing down money from Europe. We really are poor. But where we draw it down, and where I want it, is to connect up the communities on public transport. I want to take the train to Dublin. I want to take the bus to Dublin. But I want to have options that are affordable.
It may not be realistic. I'll come back.
I know, but they can do it in
I know. I want to ask Malcolm.
Holland, they can do it in Germany.
I would agree. I would agree, Grace, and let's just say, I mean, and I did properly use the word heroes because, for instance, I was out in West Waterford. I was out with Tom Cronin in Ardmore, and we had, you know, a great day. But to get people from Ardmore to Lismore, where we were canvassing after that on Saturday, it was much easier to put them all onto a bus than to use cars. What I do want to say, though, and it follows on Grace's point about one of the things about Ireland is it's great that Dublin is doing so well. But we do have the problem.
Yeah.
We do have the problem of regional imbalance. And life does exist beyond the M50, and the government doesn't realise that this is the case. And one of the big platforms that I've been campaigning on is around the issue of the sustainability of the other cities, but particularly our rural towns and villages and rural communities who are having the heart pulled out of them. And this is going to be the big challenge, Damien, because we all know around what's happening in rural communities. Farming is under serious pressure. We're seeing post offices and Garda stations close. That's now starting to move.
There's plenty happening in
there is a lot.
Huge difference in the
Yeah,
last
but
5 years.
Deirdre, I'm sorry, I don't think you realise, and I think part of the problem is you're part of a
absolutely
government. You're part of a government that doesn't
And your
realise
party is
that life
facilitating that government, you're
exists.
supporting it.
That life exists in rural Ireland, and what we need to look about doing is we need to look about levelling the playing field for those in the farming community, but also businesses in our small towns and cities. And our businesses who are paying high commercial rates, who are being screwed in terms of insurance and other financial products, and who aren't on a level playing field when you're competing with some of the
Okay,
online
pause for 1
companies.
second. Deirdre, come back on that.
I mean, have you heard of Ireland 2040, the investment programme the government has announced for
that-
Waterford?
I-
Cork,
I-
and
Deirdre,
Sorry,
talk about
Waterford was
that.
barely
Waterford-
mentioned in that
The
report,
time is running out,
Deirdre.
and you've taken a lot of time.
Damien, can I
€6
say-
million
yeah,
euro
okay.
for the North Quays development, 1.3 for Timor
Yeah.
Town Centre. I'm sure that's going to be
Yeah.
wonderful, Grace,
Yeah.
and it
But
is.
can
and
I
really
just say
looking
The
one
forward to
thing?
seeing
hospital,
it.
Can I say
the
one thing? Hang on
airport,
a sec,
the
Malcolm,
university,
Malcolm.
where
You used the
are
word
they?
heart pulled out Waterford. The heart has been pulled out of Waterford in UHW, the hospital here. Not only the people in the street have said to me, Damien, not only is this government not supporting the people of Waterford,
Have you told
the
them
living
about
people, hang on, the
investment in
living
North
people of
Quays? Have you
Waterford.
told them
Last
about
week
Timor? Have you told
we
them about
saw
leader
that
investment?
this government is
Rural
not supporting
regeneration
the
programmes?
dead people of
Right,
Can the
Waterford.
three of-
right, that was
Absolutely.
immoral.
Can the three of you-
That was
And
immoral.
shocking.
Sorry,
Grace,
1
you're
second.
right.
Can I
It's
ask you,
immoral.
Trevi?
And that's
Can
what's
you
happening
stay for
now
another
in
10 minutes,
Waterford.
please?
Yeah.
Can you stay
Yes.
for another 10
Be
minutes?
delighted.
Right, okay. We were going to let you go before the news. We're going to take the news. We're overrunning slightly. Come back straight after the news, okay? Posters up. It shows an outrageous spend. Fine Gael abandoning us at every opportunity, says another texter. Poor voting on the environment in Europe. Damien, you'll have to challenge Malcolm on the point regarding Brian Crowley, MEP, being in a very, very right-wing group of different people. There's a bit rich coming from you, said this texter. Sean Kelly, Deirdre Clune.
Yes, my running mate.
How are you getting on with Sean?
Very well. We keep out of one another's hair, and it works really well.
Are you sharing Waterford, or what are you
we
doing?
both come into Waterford and into South Tip and then Cork for me and
Yeah.
and we have our other
And how's that
candidates
working
as well.
out? Because that can be a bit tricky now, you know?
Well, it's a huge
Waterford
area.
could
It's a
fall
big
through the
area, and
cracks.
you manage to just deal with it. Like I go to Waterford. I'm in Waterford today, and I'm campaigning in Waterford, and I think Sean was here yesterday. So that's the way we just keep out of one
So-
another, and it works really well.
It works really well. People might
For
be
you, but maybe not for Waterford.
that might be a bit
And I'm
confused,
being
yeah.
here tomorrow.
Earlier on, Grace was given out about the party's record regarding Waterford and regarding, I suppose, rural Ireland. What have you got to say about that?
Well, I would refute the state that the government isn't interested at all in rural Ireland. In fact, and I outlined here the rural development, the Project 2040 and how we propose to invest in infrastructure up to 2040. If we're going to have 1 million additional people living on this island, 75% of them are going to be outside Dublin. Waterford is projected to grow in population by 50%. Where are they going to live? We need infrastructure. The 6 million that has come from that scheme to develop the North Quays, to kickstart transport infrastructure, transport developments in that area. As I mentioned, the 1.3 million for Timor Town. They're all investments to encourage jobs, to encourage people to settle here. And I think that they are very important. The Rural Regeneration Programme, the funding from CAP, the development of a Southeast Institute of Technology, very important. And that, university.
University.
Excuse me.
University,
University,
Southeast.
absolutely important for the Southeast. And that has happened. And it's a matter now for the two institutions to come together. And that there is a challenge
Well,
there.
Damien,
but the
it
commitment
breaks
has been
my-
made.
I'm-
very strong
but-
to ensure
Malcolm,
that that university
I'm
is
telling
Malcolm, we'll come to you in a second. I know you're shaking your head here. Grace, Deirdre, you're going to be attacked from both sides here now.
It breaks my heart. I mean that national planning framework, it wasn't climate proofed, so we've a huge
absolutely
issue on
there's a
that.
huge
Absolutely
part
not,
of it is
Deirdre, and we've
climate
spoken
proofed.
about it in Leinster
Right.
House. The other thing is, so in terms of connectivity and getting people to and from, give us the money, will you just give us
We
the
have
money?
the money.
We
So
have, but
we
how can we
started-
trust a commitment to this? So I'm
Because
very, very
that's the
concerned.
difference with
Where
this
I
plan.
think,
It
where
is
we
Sorry,
can
Deirdre,
make a
Zachary's
difference,
talk for
where
a
we
second.
can make a difference, is if we actually do draw down funding from Europe. So we have pockets of money available to Ireland that the MEPs that you haven't drawn down. So we're poor in this country for bringing back money. So
But-
taxpayers paying. Give someone else an opportunity, and I'm asking Waterford to give me that opportunity.
Malcolm, you're shaking
to
your
bring-
head.
to support Waterford and bring. the
You're
money
going
back.
red there, and I just want to mention Seamus sent in a lovely letter after our previous talk, and fair play to him for sending it. Seamus, thank you very much for that. Malcolm?
I mean, I'm shaking my head if Deirdre thinks that, all is well in rural Ireland. I think if you live in any part of rural Ireland now, people who live in rural Ireland realise with their post offices closing, with losing Gardaí, with the crisis that's in agriculture, with young people leaving those communities, that it needs major investment. And when we look at what needs to happen at European level in terms of
you've
regional
said that
development,
already,
crucial.
so we won't go
I'm
over
the
that
only one,
again.
but Damien, I'm the only one here who has been talking, about the sustainability of rural communities, about the needs to support the
Malcolm,
transition.
I'm
Hang
on
on, I
the
haven't
rural,
finished. I haven't finished
I brought
my
the
point.
committee down
And I
to
haven't finished.
Dunhill
I haven't finished
and,
my point.
just recently.
And about the transition that is needed for agriculture, to deal with CAP. I do want to come back to, and I think it was telling that Deirdre, didn't name correctly the need for University of the Southeast, because coming from Wexford, where it is we know it's absolutely essential to have a university within this region. It's a major problem for this region that we haven't had for a long time. I work with the Higher Education Authority, so I'm very familiar with the process. One of our other biggest challenges, Damien, which is something we haven't touched on and related to that, is the changes that are going to come about as a result of technology and automation over the next 5 to 10 years, where we will potentially see 65% of current jobs either made redundant or significantly changed. Now, what can be done at European level? We need to ensure that the European training and social funds in various guises are used to upskill our citizens. We saw in Waterford, for instance, when Waterford Glass closed, that there was a need for major investment to be able to ensure that those skilled workers could adapt.
And Fianna
it
Fáil
didn't
were in
happen.
power, it didn't happen.
No, it didn't happen.
And Fianna Fáil were in government.
This was before my time in politics. But here's my point. No, Damien, here's my point. Here's where I come from in terms of prioritising the investment in education and research, is that when we are going to face with all of that technological change over the next 5 to 10 years, we've got to ensure that every citizen, that there's investment in training and research and education to equip our citizens to be able to deal with
Okay,
that.
pause for a quick second. Deirdre, a gentleman has said, I had to stop the car. We've been given 6 million and not the 100 plus million needed from the North Keys. Ask Deirdre Clune, when will we receive the balance?
Well, that is part of this year's urban and regeneration programme. There's a commitment to 6 million, and there is more to come in that budget as well. And I don't know what's going to happen next
You don't know
year.
what's going to happen. You don't know if it will come.
But that 6 million is an absolute commitment to
I
the
know,
project,
but what about the rest
because
of
it is a
it?
very important project, and I'm sure that will come. And it's,
You're
it's,
sure it'll
it's
come?
public. It is public investment in public infrastructure and transport links. I mean, there is that is there to attract and to leverage private sector investment as well, because it's not owned. It's not. So that's going to be a real issue there. But it is a commitment from the government, and there will be more of it because as I said, Waterford, Cork, Limerick and Galway, the 4 cities outside Dublin, are being targeted to support the increase in population.
Grace,
directly targeted with investment.
Malcolm says you're not talking about rural Ireland at all.
Oh, I'm always talking about rural Ireland because I mean I live outside.
And would your policies in
as
some
they
way
say, outside
hamper rural Ireland?
Not at all. So we are all about sustainable development, and we have that programme, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But the Green Party fundamentally, like we look to supporting bottom up. So that's local communities, and particularly, and particularly agriculture, Malcolm. With farming and farmers. I spoke at the AGM of the local IFA in Fenner a few months ago, and the Green Party have superb partnerships with many people in the farming community, farming families. We're all about supporting farmers, sustainable progress. But the one thing we are absolutely opposed to is a small elite group controlling the agriculture and agri sector in Ireland. And the farmers, and every farmer who's listening today knows the farming family are not getting fair price.
Somebody
and
said...
that's what we want to do. We want to support farming in Ireland and in rural Ireland, but particularly the farming families are supported and they get a fair price for the product. They're stressed, they're under pressure because of the current government policy here.
Somebody said regarding the posters, we'll have to refer to Déise today, Maria McCann, on Thursday 25th of April. We might go back about that. Yeah. In 1 minute, Malcolm Byrne, why should people vote for you?
So I think that the European Parliament can no longer remain a retirement home for national politicians. We've got to ensure that we have strong and effective voices that are out there. What can I do and what can I bring? I have private sector and public sector experience that I can bring to it. We need a voice in the southeast. I'm from Wexford. I understand the issues that affect our communities. People are being screwed with the cost of insurance and financial products here in Ireland. We need to open up that market. We need to use European regional and rural sustainability funds to be able to support our farm families, but also our rural communities. And in the southeast, we need investment in the University of the Southeast, particularly in areas of research and innovation, to be able to equip us so that all of our citizens can unlock their potential into the future.
Deirdre?
I'm standing on my record as an MEP, and I've been in politics a long time. I think Europe is really important for us. I think it matters now more than ever, and I think we need to send out people there who are committed to it and who can engage. The art of compromise is very important in the European Parliament, and it's going to be more challenging than ever in the next Parliament if we're to believe the poll predictions. I think the next Parliament has to address, number one, the budget, and the budget for the Common Agriculture Policy, the CAP programme, is important. Everybody who's elected from Ireland needs to support that and ensure that we maintain that budget. It's extremely important. Climate change, protection of our citizens against terrorism and cybersecurity is going to be very important as well, and they're the things that happen at European level. And most important, we didn't get a chance to discuss it, but the social agenda and the work that has gone on in the last Parliament in terms of work-life balance, improving for carers and for those on the lower rung in the employment sector, that agenda as well. I'm very committed to, have been, and want to continue that work in the next Parliament.
Grace O'Sullivan?
Damien, if I am elected, the people of Waterford will know their MEP. They will have a direct line for communication with their MEP. They know their MEP. Their candidate at the moment is Grace O'Sullivan, who has more than 37 years of activism working in the area of climate, environment, but also, Damien, I'm an alumni of WIT. I have postgraduate diploma in business development and innovation, and I'm an ecologist. And I think anyone who knows me knows I'm really sincere, hard, committed worker, not only for Waterford, but I think I'll be brilliant in Europe. I speak Dutch and Spanish, so I'll be bringing a load in there from Waterford, and I can absolutely promise the people of Waterford they will know what I'm doing on a regular basis.
Malcolm Byrne, thank you very much for coming down. Deirdre
you.
Clune, thank you very much for coming as well. And Grace Sullivan, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you, Damien.